what a difference a year can make. Last year, I think most economists who look at the New York economy projected that New York was going to fare worse than the nation in the downturn. After all, in the last two recessions, in the early 90s and the earlier part of this decade, our job decline was twice that of the national level, and lasted a much longer time. This year, we now look at it, we can see that our job decline has been half of what it has been at the national level. And I think the various financial bailout measures, not only TARP, but all of the lending that the Fed has done and all of the investments that the U.S. Treasury Department has done and the deposit guarantees from the FDIC and so on, have made a world of difference. It hasn't fixed all of the problems per the expectations going in, but it's certainly made a huge difference in New York, and a lot of that is a positive difference. It's certainly made a positive difference in terms of our overall job loss and in terms of the outlook for the city and state budgets, although there are huge challenges there. It would have been worse otherwise. Still, even though our payroll job decline is half that of the nation, our unemployment problem is every bit as bad as it is at the national level. And that's a situation where unemployment is in double digits. It's 10.3% now in New York. And the expectation is that that's going to continue for many more months, if not years. Why is unemployment so high here? Most of the job losses have been outside of the finance sector. Self-employment is not the same fallback that it was in the last two downturns. Small business bankruptcies are soaring. In our report, the summary of which you have in your packets, A Tale of Two Recessions, New York City in this year, 2009, we have a graph that shows the bankruptcy rate for the southern and eastern districts of New York, which is the downstate area, compared to the U.S., and it's every bit as bad here as it is around the nation. We have a real problem with long duration unemployment. 40% of the over 400,000 people unemployed in New York have been unemployed for more than 6 months. That's a higher percent than at the national level. The average person who's unemployed has been unemployed for 7 months. 10% of our unemployed have been unemployed for 2 years. There's a wide disparity by race and ethnicity. The white unemployment rate in New York now is a little over 7%. The black unemployment rate, the official unemployment rate is 17% for New York City. Hispanics split the difference at 12%. We also have 150,000 people who are working part-time but really want and need full-time work. And that number has soared over the last year. When you put all this together and calculate a real unemployment that adds together the official unemployment rate, the discouraged workers, and the underemployed, you get an overall unemployment rate of 16 or 17%. For blacks, it's 22%. For Hispanics, it's 21%. What is this in terms of number of people in New York? 410,000 people officially unemployed, 150,000 people underemployed, working part-time or one full-time work, 100,000 people discouraged, not even counted in the official unemployment numbers, 660,000 people altogether. We desperately need to modernize our unemployment insurance system in New York State. In the United States, unemployment systems are operated by the state with support from the federal government, but it's up to the states to set the levels. We haven't adjusted that maximum benefit level in over 10 years. We are lower than all of our neighboring states. The average unemployment compensation benefit compared to the average wage in New York, what's referred to as the wage replacement rate, ranks New York 49th among 50 states. 48 states are higher than New York in terms of the wage replacement rate. So it's important to get the economic policies right, the fiscal and economic policies right at all levels of government. Let's speak for a second about the federal level. The stimulus package from earlier this year has made a world of difference. It hasn't solved all the problems, but our problems would be a lot worse in the absence of that. The stimulus package allowed states to close about a third of their budget gaps. The other third was, another third was through spending cuts and various tax and fee increases, so it would have been a lot worse than the federal stimulus. There's been billions of dollars that have flowed to individuals in New York by virtue of the stimulus through increased unemployment, food stamp benefits, COBRA coverage for the unemployed, and so on. The stimulus package, it's estimated, will keep 400,000 New Yorkers out of poverty in 2009. So it's ludicrous for those people who say that the stimulus package is not working and it hasn't made any difference. It hasn't solved all the problems, but it's made a world of difference. I think it's very clear, and the White House Summit on Jobs yesterday was an indication of this. Federal Reserve Chair Bernanke clearly agreed yesterday that the unemployment problem is the #1 problem the country is facing right now. We need to have a new set of federal policies to support job creation through a mix of things: wage subsidies, job tax credits, public service jobs, job sharing, and so on. And I happen to think that because we can't keep adding spending and spending without finding new revenues, that we should give serious consideration to a Wall Street transaction tax of some sort. Senator Harkin introduced legislation yesterday. Warren Buffett supports this, thinks it's a good idea. There's a lot of other support for that. If you apply the tax rate at a very modest level, you wouldn't do anything to really burden the average beneficiary of pension funds, and hopefully you would dampen some of the speculation. There needs to be more state fiscal relief. There's a need to support state budgets until state revenues can recover. And there's a need for more aid to the unemployed, although I happen to think that it would be better at this point to take money, rather than agreeing to pay extended unemployment benefits forever, because we've got a situation with very long-term unemployment. We should take some of that money and use it to subsidize job creation. Everybody who's unemployed would rather be working. It would be better for the economy, and so on. Greg, I think, made some excellent points in terms of the continuing problems in the finance sector. I don't think we can be sanguine about it, even though there's been, to some extent, some recovery in the finance sector in New York. That by no means indicates that we're out of the woods. There's a need to do more at the federal level to revive small and medium-sized banks and the financial institutions and structures that lend to small and medium-sized businesses. I happen to agree with former Federal Reserve Chairman Volcker when he says that we should seriously reconsider reinstating the Glass-Steagall Act separation between investment banks and commercial banks. That would in part address the too big to fail issue. Finally, in the long run, for us to get away from an economy that's been bubble prone, which I think it has been for the last 15 years, we need to do something. We need to have long-term policies in place that help raise wages. Because otherwise, we'll have continued income polarization with growth only occurring as a result of bubbles. To get sustainable growth like we had in this country in the 1950s and 60s and early 70s, when we had an expanding middle class, we need to have policies that raise wages, raise the minimum wage, pass the Employee Free Choice Act. At the state and local level, we need to link economic development subsidies that government gives to business to wage standards. This is an issue right now with the reform of industrial development agencies in Albany and in New York City with rezoning changes that support big development. We need to have some minimal labor standards as part of it.
Thank you, James.